So, yeah, same subject matter. Hello, sisters. All of us who are moving back home and taking back our children from predators. Yeah. Anyway, I want to talk about something very interesting that I discovered this weekend when I've kind of, once you open up the sewage, there's no going back, right? You just keep going, and it's kind of like an energy. It just pushes you, further and further in to kind of heal. And this weekend was marked with an enormous amount of emotion and grief and hurt, and it was very powerful. So one of the things that I realize is that if you don't let go of the hurt, they still have power. And I think that's one thing the child does, is it refuses the pain of what's going on, and it refuses the abandonment, it refuses the denial, it refuses the hurt. And one of the most difficult things for me has been to acknowledge that I have pain and that there's enormous sorrow, because my survival mechanism said you just have to be strong and you have to keep going. But the actual healing is in the ability to be hurt, like feel great grief and sadness. And this is very difficult for me to let go of, and because for me it's like, you piece of shit, there's a lot of anger, but underneath the anger is enormous amounts of grief. And it's difficult to get to the grief that you really feel, because you don't want to let go, you don't want to collapse. But in fact, the great healing, no matter how much, the great healing, and all the crying and the real kind of deep suffering of what happened actually releases the power of that person. Because if you don't, I realized when I was in ceremony this weekend that there was a person there still protecting him, and she was still protecting him, or whatever that kind of dark entity was protecting him, and almost like laughing at me, because I wouldn't let go of the deep grief. And when I let go of the real feelings and stopped being strong and tried to pretend that I could handle it, and just said, I didn't say anything, I just might let my heart go, there was just a release of so much sorrow. And again, the realization for me is, if you're not releasing the sorrow, that hurt that you're keeping inside continues to keep that predator active, basically. It continues to keep, you continue to be held hostage by the predator. So, and of course, the child, when she's abused, needs to keep it a secret for her to survive, and she needs to be strong so she can survive, and she needs to hide it so she can survive, and she doesn't want to feel, right? And you kind of have to take the dominoes all the way back and tear down the strength, tear down the anger, and get to the feelings, because actually the healing is in releasing the feelings that little girl kept and hid, because there was no one there there was no vessel to contain them, and there was no one there to give them to. So another thing, and as I realize as I get closer and closer to understanding the amount of power that this horrendous human being kind of had over me, the kind of sovereignty over my soul that he had, one of the things that I realized, and that the Great Mother has forced me to look at, is because he dominated everyone's existence in my house, he basically said to me, you have no right to exist. And the only person who has a right to exist here is him, me, is me. And also, so you have no right to ask for help, You have no right to feel. You have no right to do anything if it hasn't got to do with taking care of me, which is beyond sadistic and selfish, and it's just evil, the devil incarnate, really. So I've been forced to ask for help, and I don't mean help in here necessarily, but in other ways, and it's been extraordinarily difficult. I cannot do that. I am not allowed to ask for help, because if I ask for help, and I'm talking about now as a child, because everything has to do related to that child, if I ask for help, that means that I'm not attending to him. I'm a nuisance, I'm an interference in his journey, like I'm not allowed to interfere in his needs, in his, reality. There's something wrong with me if I need help. There's something wrong in the same way there's something wrong if you cry, if you're abused. It's all about, like, you have no right to exist. And somewhere in my system, well, it's like being branded like an animal. This code is just like, it kind of held tight, right? So I've literally had to come up to the situation where I need to ask for help and I need to do the things. And she's done this. She's pushed me into the places so that I could completely face the terror of doing a simple act and then recognize all the terror that comes up from it. And then the understanding that it has nothing to do with the asking. It has to do with the silencing and the terror and the abuse. And in ceremonies now, it's literally like lightning rods of stuff, of kind of energetic shifting that's going on. It's uncomfortable, like I had a muscle almost spasm. It's physical. I literally realized that it's like they seep into your system. They seep into your system, and they're in your cells. Everything that you've learned, they've done. And so she literally has to go through every cell, and physically, like literally just like, it's all usually around my mouth, but also in my body, where it's just like I'm being pulled and pushed. It's just like pieces of lightning, like they're lightning rods. That's how deeply the code is entrenched in your system and doesn't want to release. So she has to release me physically, to be able to even release the emotion, to release this hurt, this grief, this terror is so deeply embedded in my system that to excavate it, because it's literally an excavation, because something inside me doesn't want to release it. And there's been a lot of release, but it's just there's very deep grief and sadness, and she literally has to like tear my body apart, and that's what it feels like. That she's literally tearing me apart, and going through my system, and when I finally, it's not a mental thing because it's nothing to do with your mind. It's more like I surrender completely to you. I surrender to everything. It's almost like it's literally you're a landscape for a battle between the light and the dark. And, and you're just a landscape, and you have to, somewhere in your system has to completely release to the light. And it's very difficult to release to the light completely, because I don't want to feel those feelings. My whole life I've been avoiding the feelings, because that's made me look weak. That's what he said, you're weak, that you're wrong. All of these tricks are the tricks of the devil to convince you that what he's doing and who he is matters, and you don't. Because again, as I said, any parent that abuses a child is evil. I don't know how else to say that, because if you're going to abuse someone, go do it to someone who's your peer. Don't take something weak and vulnerable and armed. So I suppose this is really about I want to bring this up because I recognize that in the end we continue to give them power if we don't let go of the incredible sorrow and sadness that we're holding on to. And I keep thinking, yes, you know, I'm angry, I've done all that, but this code, this kind of like dark entity that literally seeps into your light, it's like ink on blotting paper. It just seeps in, and it's very subtle, and the way it controls is really, really subtle. So it's like she's kind of like a drilling. She's going through the layers, she's going through the layers, she's going through the layers, until I no longer have any more belief at all. And I think that will eventually happen when I've literally emptied out all of the sorrow and the sadness and the truth of growing up in hell. And it's a journey of kind of the dark night of the soul. It's a journey back to the light, and I don't know how long it's going to take, and I don't know what, but I know one thing is that I know where I am. Like, I know that she, and I trust the Great Mother absolutely, and I'm going to keep sitting until she has cleaned out every fucking cell of my body from here to eternity. And I know that everything that happens, and even though sometimes it's really difficult, like asking for help, like she's doing it so that I can again clean out and liberate and have my power return. It's almost like there's a desert and she's like bringing back the ocean, and it's little by little it's trickling in, it's trickling in. At some point the desert will be completely overwhelmed by the ocean, and I'll be finally home and free, and all the great things that come with knowing who you are, removing by acknowledging the grief, the darkness. And as I've said from the beginning, all I want to do is be like a fish in the water. It just knows where it has. It doesn't have to think about it, it just does it. So anyway, so loads of love to all the sisters out there who are going through this hell, because it's fucking hell. And we're on all this journey, we're kind of on this journey all together. And I hope that my pit stops along the way can help you, and get us all closer to home.